Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is May 29th. The other day, as I was going through my little page-a-day calendar by the front door, I came across a quote I had saved from last year. It was one of those lines that sticks with you, and this one is from Alan Alexander Milne, the author of Winnie-the-Pooh. He wrote, "A bear, however hard he tries, grows tubby without exercise." Now, I'm not so worried about the tubby part, but the exercise part, that one landed. Because this time of year, I have to remind myself that the gardener I am in October, strong, seasoned, used to the hours, is not the gardener I am right now. A few springs ago, I planned to be out there with my student gardeners 3 hours a day. That year, I figured out pretty quickly that I was gassed after 2, because the work accumulates faster than you expect, and the garden will always have more work for you to do. It just keeps multiplying. It doesn't run out of work, but you can run out of you. So as you move through these early days of the season, pace yourself. Leave something in the tank. The garden will be there tomorrow, and so will the laundry. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1846 that the English botanical collector Henry Wickham was born. By the time he reached his 20s, Henry was living along the Tapajós River in Brazil, where the air clung to the skin, where insects hummed in the canopy, and where the river moved wide and brown through the heat. As he tried to make a life there, Henry cleared land, planted crops, and worked to make something succeed. As the region began to change around him, the rubber boom was underway. Fortunes were being made in the forest, and Henry saw an opportunity for himself. In 1876, he began collecting seeds from wild rubber trees, Hevea brasiliensis, deep in the Amazon. Anticipating how valuable they could become, he gathered rubber tree seeds by the tens of thousands, packed them in wooden crates, and then sealed them inside glass Wardian cases. Then he labeled the shipment, quote, "exceedingly delicate botanical specimens," and sent them off to Kew. In a letter describing the shipment, Henry called the seeds a great prize. Surprisingly, most of them germinated, and some of the seedlings were sent on to British colonies in Asia. For Henry, at the time, it was simply about doing his job and being in the right place at the right moment. Years later, he was knighted for his service to tropical agriculture. But back in Brazil, Henry's shipment of seeds is still remembered as the day the rubber left the forest. And it was on this day, in 1939, that the American naturalist Joseph Grinnell died. He was 62. As he was growing up in California, Joseph watched the landscape change. The grizzly bear hunted out, and the passenger pigeon gone. In places like Pasadena, the dry riverbeds and scrubby hillsides were paved over, and the boom never stopped. As Joseph came of age, he realized he could not stop any of it, but he could document it. So on New Year's Day, when he was 17, Joseph opened his notebook and began again. The entry read, January 1, 1894, a red-shafted flicker, specimen 72. And he recorded the date, the location, the elevation, and the details in permanent ink. From that morning forward, Joseph recorded everything: wind direction, habitat, and absence. Joseph wrote, "You can't tell in advance which observations will prove valuable. do record them all. When he trained his students in the field, Joseph worked them the same way. And there was no dinner, no sleep, and no beer until the notes were transcribed. As part of that discipline, Joseph inspected their notebooks with a magnifying glass. And because he wanted precision above sentiment, he banned the word beautiful. He wanted data clear enough to last. And yet, in his own private journals, Joseph followed a softer set of rules. He wrote of the shimmering outdoor light and the melancholy song of a thrush. It turns out he felt it all. He generally kept the feeling separate from the record. But as he aged, Joseph believed the world was changing faster than anyone admitted. And he also believed that if he did not write it down precisely, it would vanish twice, once from the hills and once from memory. But Joseph did not live to see the proof. Decades later, scientists retraced his routes. They climbed the same ridges and stood on the same slopes, and they opened their notebooks where he had opened his. The birds had moved higher, the ranges had shifted, and the blooming had changed. After Joseph's death, his wife Hilda wrote, "For the use of the student of the present and the analyst of the future." It turns out, Joseph was writing to us. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear a passage about making a garden from the English writer Gilbert Keith Chesterton, born on this day in London, May 29th in 1874. As a man, Gilbert was a broad-shouldered figure with a hat, a cape, and a cane. As he worked, he wrote essays quickly and constantly, at a desk or in a train compartment, on faith, politics, paradox, and sometimes about gardens. In later years, Gilbert lived in Beaconsfield, Buckinghamshire, where cottage plots sat behind brick walls, and May would have meant fresh turf, early roses, and the first red geraniums set into beds. Here's an excerpt from one of Gilbert's garden essays. "The moment you have a garden, you have a very dangerous thing. You have a place where something may happen. You have a place where something may grow. The average man cannot cut clay into the shape of a man, but he can cut earth into the shape of a garden. And though he arranges it with red geraniums and blue potatoes in alternate straight lines, he is still an artist, because he has chosen. The average man cannot paint the sunset whose colors he admires, but he can paint his own house with what color he chooses. And though he paints it pea green with pink spots, he is still an artist, because that is his choice." Gilbert wrote those words in a train compartment or at a cluttered desk in the very same quick hand he used for everything. Gilbert was trying to tell us that choosing red geraniums in a straight line is the same as painting a masterpiece. And that's why every time I plant something in a straight line or choose one color over another and then stand back and wonder if it's good enough, it's in that moment that I often find myself thinking about Gilbert. Because to him, gardening was never about getting it right. It was about taking pleasure in making something your own, and then not evaluating it, just taking pleasure in the doing. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, A Therapist's Garden by Eric Keller. This book is part of Specialty Gardens Week, which means all this week's book recommendations focus on a particular plant or a particular practice. Eric Keller has spent years doing horticultural therapy, working with special needs children, cancer patients, seniors with dementia, and girls in juvenile detention centers. A therapist's garden moves month by month through a New England year, telling nearly 100 stories about what happens when people who are in pain are given something to tend. Here's an excerpt from Eric's book. I gathered 13 different mints and a lone Cleveland sage and set them out on a table with only a letter for identification. Entering the art room, my clients are hit with a huge diversity of scents, and a few are taken aback by the bouquet. The sense of smell is often taken for granted, but can be very powerful. It can trigger strong emotions. One client talks about her mother's rose garden. Her voice cracks a bit, and her eyes water as she tells the class of her mom. We have 14 different plants here, each with a different smell. Gooseberry, lemon rose, lime rose, and snowflake geraniums. Apple, chicken soup, curly, grapefruit, mojito, mountain, mystery, and Ridgefield mints, and a Cleveland sage. The point of the exercise is not to identify all the different mints precisely, but to explore the differences. What Eric is trying to say is that the garden has never intended you to have a green thumb. It just needs you to show up. This is one of my favorite books, A Therapist's Garden by Eric Keller. The best prescription. Nobody is writing often enough. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1984 that the American landscape architect Edith Shriver died in Salem, Oregon. She was 83 years old. By then, her family and friends called her Nina, a nod to her small stature. Her last name, Shriver, comes from the Dutch word for scribe, or writer. As a landscape architect, Nina was a writer of gardens, using a T-square instead of a pen. Back at the beginning, she grew up in Kingston, New York, in an apartment directly above her father's railroad restaurant. As a teenager, Nina spent summers at the Lowthorpe School of Landscape Architecture in nearby Massachusetts, one of the only places in America that would train women in the field. After she graduated in 1923, Nina was scooped up by the most prestigious female-led firm in the country, Ellen Biddle Shipman's New York office. There, Nina was the one at the drafting table. She calculated drainage, engineered the grades, and inked the plans. But Shipman's name went on all the plaques. By the time she reached her mid-20s, Nina needed a break. She took a sabbatical to study the gardens of Europe. And on the ship crossing the Atlantic, a steward unknowingly seated her at the children's table. It wasn't until later, when Nina asked for a glass of wine, that she realized she wasn't seated where she belonged. After she demanded to be moved, the table change led her not just to a new seat, but to her destiny. Sitting across from her was Elizabeth Lord, a landscape architect from Salem, Oregon, whose father had served as the state's governor. By the time the ship docked, Nina and Elizabeth had created plans for their own landscape architecture business based in Salem. Looking back, Nina laughed. We were free-swinging career girls, and no one questioned us. When the doors opened in 1929, Lord & Shriver became the first woman-owned landscape architecture firm in the Pacific Northwest. Nina was the bones, Elizabeth was the bloom. In 1932, Nina and Elizabeth built their home at the base of Gaiety Hill and lovingly referred to it as Gaiety Hollow. There, Nina carved 6 outdoor rooms from a parcel barely half an acre. She saved a 300-year-old white oak by building the entire garden around it. She planted her favorite camellias, boxwood, and a grape-covered pergola that they never stopped walking toward. In that moment, the girl who grew up with trains rumbling beneath her had finally built something that couldn't move. For 40 years, every evening at 5, work stopped. The drafting pens went down, and Nina and Elizabeth sat on the back porch with dry martinis and watched the light change through the garden they had made together. Later, Nina reflected on those years, saying, "Salem was so different then. We had a wonderful social life, as well as a profession that took us all over the Northwest. All the historical people were still living. There was entree into all those houses because Miss Lord's family was prominent here." When Elizabeth died in 1976, she was buried in her family's mausoleum in Salem. Nina lived on for 8 more years, alone in the house they had built together, still clipping the boxwood by hand, keeping the lines sharp, and refusing to let the geometry blur. Before Nina died, she made sure that the house and the garden would go to someone who would tend them. For decades after, the Strand family kept faith with the garden before selling it to the Lord and Triver Conservancy. When Nina died, her family brought her back to Kingston, back to the railroad town she had spent her life writing into the earth. But back in Salem, the garden is still there. Gaiety Hollow, the boxwood rooms, the pergola, the double dark pink camellia still blooming under the oak, just as it did when Elizabeth and Nina were both alive. As we close the show today, remember, the garden doesn't ask you to do everything, just something, just enough. And if you were out there today, even for a little while, then you've already done more than you think. Because the garden isn't keeping score. It's simply waiting for your return. And tomorrow, when you step back into it, you'll pick up exactly where you left off. A little stronger, a little steadier, and a little more yourself. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.